My Hero Academia.
Oh boy.
Speaking of,
Yeah. We are on My Hero Academia chapter 287, Mistake. Last we left off, we ended up in the One for All world, where All for One and Shigaraki are also there. Midoriya is in a disembodied state, and Nana Shimura showed up to be like, "We got this, young boy." So we pick up where we left off, and All for One, One for All. Wait, All for One, right? I'm gonna get those confused a lot. All for One is like starting to talk shit, and I knew that this is where I was like, "Oh wow, Josh loves this guy now." Because the second he said, "Wow, a dead person,"
yeah, that was mad disrespectful. Like, you know damn well who that is. But then again, she is just another iteration of it, you know? So I guess it really is like, oh, look at that guy over there.
a dead person who happens to be your grandmother. The pathetic, incompetent Nana Shimura stands before us. I'm like, Jesus. Did he steal a shit-talking quirk, too?
Oh, yes.
He's getting the ultimate right now. So he basically explains, we get a little bit of, like, information about what this world is, in a way. In so many words, they explain, like, they're in the middle of a transplant, this is essentially what a visual representation of what it looks like to steal One for All, I guess. Like, being in this world and have this darkness overtake it. He's basically like, we're in the middle of a transplant, and essentially he explains that, like, based on the premise that when people go through organ transplants, they get, like, slight changes in their personality or their tastes. So too, when you absorb quirks, you also take on somewhat of a consciousness of the original owner of that quirk. And that's what this world is, in a way. It's like a home for all of these consciousnesses of all of these quirk users that were taken by All for One and also passed down through by One for All. It's probably more complicated than that, but that's basically what he's kind of saying. After we get that kind of information, also when you have this kind of ability to take quirks or pass down quirks, you are able to interact with these consciousnesses. In One for All for One's case, these consciousnesses like kind of haunt him in his dreams, which is like pretty wild. They just come into his dreams and start talking shit to him. But he's like, that don't affect me, you know. But essentially, he also explains that the reason One for All is able to access this world is because when he merged One for All with the power stalking quirk that he gave his brother, All for One, he created this environment, so to speak. Like, the resulting power is the housing of this consciousness world, in a way. Am I on track so far? I feel like
I think so.
Okay. They don't go into super detail because I guess they plan on doing that later. But that's kind of the gist. They like intentionally leave out certain bits of information. It's very carefully worded. But yeah, that's when Shigaraki takes a look at his grandmother for the first time, not in a photo. You know what I mean? Like, and he wonders like why she was in his like weird consciousness thing. But yeah, he affirms his like, don't worry, I hate you too, Grandma. And then he starts using his quirk within the All for One, One for All world, and he starts to affect it, and it starts to make it a little easier for them to steal One for All. And usually, only people One for All can affect this world in any way. But Shigaraki's hatred is so strong that he's able to influence it as well. But Shigaraki's attacks are not discriminate because he starts to unleash him on All for One, and One for All is like, "Whoops! I nearly forgot you hate me too."
Yeah, he started getting hit by the erasure as well, right?
Yeah, and he's like, "Good thing," but that's good in the new symbol Pillar of Terror, and that's when All for One's brother comes through, and he's like, I'm here to protect Midoriya. We will follow him into nothing, into any battle, you know. Shigaraki, once he shows up, like One for All starts to like fight back even harder because he is the original one. It's assumed that he has like the most power in this world. So you know, All for One tries to like use his power and combine it with Shigaraki's, and he starts talking shit about Midoriya too. He's like, you shouldn't have given this power to this boy. He's weak and he couldn't protect anybody. So why'd you give it to him? And essentially, One for All's owner, I guess we'll call him One for All for now. He's basically like, it wasn't a waste to give him these powers because, you know, he's a great guy, essentially. He's a very good boy who fights tooth and nail for others. He'll throw his own body into the fire to protect anybody. You know, and that's why we will follow him. Our powers is his. And like Midoriya starts to like blast forward, it seems. Like he finds the strength to start getting up and moving in this world, and then at that instance, that's when the two separate in the real world. Midoriya and Shigaraki. Shigaraki was just too beat up at this point to really make a difference in taking over the One for All world. And Midoriya's pretty fucked up at this point, so he's just like, please don't start moving again. As
begging,
yeah,
begging his god.
Yeah, as All for One is telling Shigaraki to retreat for now because his body's too fucked up to do anything of substance at this point. Meanwhile, back at the city, Gigantomachia is still fucking shit up, throwing buildings, whatever, just making a real mess of things. And Dabi is like, yo, I heard that Shigaraki's fighting Endeavor. We should get ready to fucking kill Endeavor. With a big smile on his face, like a thirst bucket he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Mr. Compress is like, are you good over there, Toga? You seem to be just looking for people now. Like, you seem to be scanning for those UA scamps you love so much. And this is where Toga is basically like, where do they draw the line? If heroes are supposed to save people, was Jin not considered a person? Will they kill me too? That's what I want to ask Izuku and Ochaku. Depending on their answer, I'll be fine. That's where the chapter ends. So a lot to go through.
Yeah.
A lot of information.
There's a lot this chapter.
Yeah. This was a different chapter than what I remembered, honestly. Like,
yeah.
I felt myself really looking down and just kind of reading. I guess I really sped through this, man, when I read it last. But there was a lot packed in.
Yeah, it's a lot of.
So let's unpack. It's
a lot of information, without also telling us much. It's pretty masterful in that regard. Where I'm like, I'm gonna really lost it up here and not tell you. I'll tell you just enough is what you want to hear.
So real quick, I want to talk about this whole like space, this All for One space or whatever. So I think like cause like was it One for All? Is it One for All or All for One? The villain.
One for All is the good one. All for One is the bad
one. Okay, so All for One is talking about how, like, I don't know why he brings that up specifically, right? Like the fact that he got haunted in dreams by the people whose quirks he stole, right? Because I feel like that has something to do with this world that they're in, essentially, right? Because it's like they're both the same thing, right? Like they both come from the same ability, right? So I'm thinking they have like the same worlds, just in different ways, I guess. Because like I think Josh mentioned this before the show, but there's like the differences in how their abilities are passed on or taken. Because like obviously if you take a quirk for somebody, you'll have a world where like this world exactly where it's more oppressive and more anger filled. And I think One for All would be more supportive because it's a passing of the torch. So I think they both have their own worlds inside of them.
For sure. I think that's pretty valid.
It seemed like it almost seems like it's as if it's shared, but I think it's because their quirks are, if they're, I think I remember loosely that one for all was something that came like as a package with All for One. You know what I'm saying? Their quirks are linked together in some sort of faction.
No, from what I
right?
understand is they're both separate quirks. So All for One,
Mm-hmm.
he can bestow upon quirks and he can steal quirks. One for All, you can only give quirks away. So you can't like
Yeah.
take them from anybody. You can't like absorb someone's power. But All for One can. I don't think they're linked. I think I think what we see here is a manifestation of what it looks like when All for One is stealing a quirk. It's like a mental representation of that. So, especially because All for One has this, One for All has this special property where it's similar to what All for One has, but it's not what I think it's closer that they have two separate worlds, where All for One can be haunted by the people he's taken powers from.
Yeah.
But
and the other one is obviously because they're not stealing other people's quirks; they just speak to their successors that's been passed down. You know.
Yeah.
So that's why I felt like maybe that's why I was thinking why and Brian as well thinking the quirks were kind of linked or at least came from the same place because they have very similar properties, with the only difference really being that one person can take quirk.
The reason that
I don't know. I think this is specific to One for All though. This world.
I think the reason that One for All, like they by their explanation, is the reason that One for All has this world to begin with is because he was given a quirk by All for One. So that strength quirk, that first quirk he gave him, that merged with All for One and created this All for One One for All world, where he can tap into the consciousness of the quirk that was bestowed upon him.
Oh.
Because One for All had to have stolen that strength quirk to give to the original user. That was the story.
Yeah.
Initially, is that like he was thought to be quirkless, One for All, but only through because All for One gave him a quirk, he discovered his ability was actually the ability to pass on quirks.
It's a pass on.
Yeah, you can only pass on with a One for All, but you can't absorb necessarily unless someone willingly gives it to you. And with that, you get all the previous powers that it has. It's that's the best way I could sum it up, I think. It's an interesting concept that, One for All has, All for One has, the ghost.
So what about this then? So does that mean that all these One for All people are just memories, not really spirits?
They're not spirits, no. They're
because the way that I don't know, the way that he describes the way that people are linked to their quirks, their personalities are linked to their quirks, right? Mm-hmm. So it's is it actually a spiritual thing or is it a mental thing?
No, yeah, it's not a spiritual thing, it's a mental thing. It's their subconscious is transferred into you as well, because I guess it also goes back to that quirk singularity thing. Every quirk is more than just a power. It's an essence of a person.
It's a part of you, right?
Yeah. So essentially, for lack of a better word, your consciousness also gets uploaded along with your quirk because it's so intrinsic.
Oh, okay.
That's why the Nomu, I think, all have exposed brain, because it's obviously very linked to the brain. It's something in your subconscious, your mind. Your mind gets transferred as well as your power, is from what I get.
So does that mean the brains in Nomu are human brain, or a human brain with a quirk?
Yeah, they could be like a hot
chunks of respective brains.
Yeah, the Nomu are just experimental, these big hulking beasts that get, I guess, brains placed into them. They don't really narrow down the exact method of how Nomu are created. That's what I feel.
They're like those Russian soldiers with quirks, basically.
Yeah,
transplanted in them.
From X-Force, yeah, pretty much. I mean, they obviously intentionally left a lot out here, and All Might himself doesn't seem to know everything about it himself. Hence why he doesn't have a lot of information on certain users of All for One. I don't know. It's interesting. We had to see it expounded upon. They're really playing keep away with us with this whole No,
actually, I do think they're linked. They're still linked. The abilities, because he mentions that. So he says, I find myself in a unique unique position of being able to interact with those consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. And then he says, my brother also can meddle with quirks directly, and he power. Also can interact with them.
Yeah, because the very nature of their quirks, they have a similar power. So
yeah, so I think they are linked in some way, though. Because if they can both enter this world...
Well, they can't.
Right?
That was the only reason they were in that world together is because Midoriya and Shigaraki were linked together physically. That was when Shigaraki was stealing One for All from him. And that's the only way to get in.
Part of me wants to go back and read the chapters where what's his name? Shigaraki is going through the transfer of the ability, right? Because I feel like there's probably some more to this that we haven't noticed yet. Because there's still so much about this world that they just barely touch on here.
Well, I think now that I think about it, I think there's an interesting little nod to when Nana was in his dreamscape while he was getting his powers transferred. Because he sees Nana Shimura with Deku, but he's also like,
that's true.
Why are you with me? And my theory is that at some point, Nana transferred her powers to All Might, and that's when, at a certain point, that's when All For One took her power and killed her. So that's why she exists in both planes.
I don't think he took her power, though.
You would have to in order to be part of the consciousness there.
But no, it's All For One can't take it, right? Remember? Because I'm pretty sure he doesn't have any of the former One For Alls.
No, yeah, All For One can take powers.
Oh, yeah.
Because all of them are linked to...
The brother and and Nana came up because he killed his brother and took... No,
he can never take the original quirks.
Take his brother's quirk.
He can't take any of the original quirks, I'm pretty sure, because they're linked to One For All.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm just digging at this point where
No, because her showing up there actually is a big deal, because that does show that they're probably linked, right? Because how else would Nana be there?
That's the only way I would... what the information we have available right now, that seems like the only way. Maybe... I don't know. I can't really say.
This is just a lot more complicated. The more I talk about it, the more complicated it gets for me, I think.
I think it was supposed to be that way, though. I think he wrote it specifically so it could be more mysterious. I'm like, man, you are building yourself up.
I could dig it. Yeah.
Honestly, the more I talk about it, though, the more interested I'm in. Because before, I was like, all right. This is the thing about this podcast, is that when I read it initially, I'm like, this left a lot to be desired, right? But once I started talking to you guys about it a little bit more and started getting more in depth, I started to see that there's a lot more to it, and this was actually a really big information chapter. Man. And it also kind of
breadcrumbs of lore. I guess I misinterpreted this as oh man, this is supposed to be a huge plate of information, but really it's just small appetizers, little slight snacks, not even a whole Snickers bar, just the minis you get for Halloween. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, mini sizes.
Yeah,
just bite sizes of information, just to kind of want us to have it more. Because has there ever been a time in our lives where y'all had one small piece of chocolate candy and didn't think, damn, I could go for another one?
All the time?
Yeah, the cookies and cream Hershey.
Ever think of, and not after repeated, constant, just that one,
Yeah.
Damn.
One Piece does this.
Now, I could go for another one if there was one next to me.
It's like bite-sized lore. Yeah. You know what I mean? They just drop these little nuggets just to keep us on our seat. It's effective. I'm not mad at it at all. I think it's really cool. I just wish you could explain it already. I'm over it. I want to know.
Also, it's after they split out, it kind of gives more reason to keep the story going. It gives sure they clashed here, and sure it seems like this is where a climax would typically happen. It just shows how Shigaraki, even though he's this powerful, he's still not ready to take to finish his goal and take All For One. I mean, One For All, right?
Well, yes, he was a charred corpse at this point.
Yeah, but it's also it's also that he didn't fully he didn't finish the complete process. Remember?
Yeah, he's
And
at 70-something%. He's not.
don't black out. Your body must achieve completion. That means he has to find a way to finish his transfer somehow.
Yes, obviously this was not going to be the final battle.
I know,
people
but it's
saying
like obviously this wasn't going to be the final battle.
I know.
No, obviously this wasn't going to be the final battle, but it had like a feeling like it could be, you know, like the way that the story was set up and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a great chapter. Again, just misses out on being RGC because a certain other series did a thing, but it's very good. I mean, left me wanting more.
Honestly, the Toga stuff
This
is
is
just
not
not interesting to me.
I am interested in it, but but not because I agree with her. I'm kind of annoyed by it, but I want to see it get resolved. Because they're supposed to be the bad guys at the end of the day. They're not supposed to be agreeable. They're supposed to be somewhat relatable on a level where you can say, "Oh, okay." I mean, you're not a complete fucking lunatic doing things for no logical reason.
Yeah,
they're still, a lot of them are still kids, you know, especially Toga. She's she's only a fucking teenager, so she still has a lot of big questions about the world, even though she's not all the way right in the head. And I'm interested how they're gonna go about it, but I want to save that thought for next week when they actually get into the chapter.
Yeah, there's just so much they need to resolve here. Like it's either they resolve some of that stuff here or they save it for later. But
yeah, I'll say
there's just so much
with the Toga stuff. My Hero Academia does this thing like where I don't know. Sometimes his dialogue's not great. Where I think he just has characters say things in a weird way.
I think it could be translation,
maybe,
or like translation issues.
That's probably
maybe
because he's probably very particular with how he says it in Japanese, and which makes it more challenging, I guess, in English.
Yeah, I guess I got.
That's my guess.
A scanlation of that one page just to see what it is, just to see what they would interpret it.
Yeah, the literal meaning,
but
right?
It happens every now and it's not like
not that censored bullshit.
Yeah, My Hero Academia has it has like little nuggets of typical shonen dialogue sometimes where it's like that person, you know, like it's purposely vague language, and sometimes it's just like a little weirdly worded, and maybe it is a translation issue, but I don't know. I just felt like that moment. I'm like, what are you talking? What does that mean? You know.